الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار والفلك التي تجري في البحر بما ينفع الناس وما أنزل الله من السماء من ماء فأحيا به الأرض بعد موتها وبث فيها من كل دابة وتصريف الرياح والسحاب المسخر بين السماء والأرض لآيات لقوم يعقلون صدق الله العظيم. Respected elders, dear brothers and sisters, in continuation of ayat number 164 of Surah Al-Baqarah, this ayah is related to the ayat of kainat, the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within the kainat, within the universal domain of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Coming to the ayat within this ayah, and this is rabat and connection to the previous ayah as we have already gone over. Then in the previous ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned and made very clear the fact that the ilah of everything, of all of us, and the ilah of everything is one ilah. There's no ilah but him. There's none worthy of worship other than him. He's Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Part of the sifah of Ar-Rahman, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed favors on his creation without the ability of this creation to even number those favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. If you were to try to number the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will not be able to do it. So coming to this ayah, some of those favors are mentioned in the form of ayat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in this ayah, and there are two major elements related to this ayah. We'll just go over the translation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, definitely in the creation of the heavens and the earth. وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ, in the alteration of the night and day. وَالْفُلْكِ الَّتِي تَجْرِي فِي الْبَحْرِ, and by the ships that sail in the sea. بِمَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسِ, for the benefit of mankind. وَمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مِن مَّاءٍ فَأَحْيَا بِهِ الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا, and by the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down water from the sky, and with that water he gives life to the dead earth. فَأَحْيَا بِهِ الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا وَبَثَّ فِيهَا مِن كُلِّ دَابَّةٍ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives life to the dead earth. وَبَثَّ فِيهَا مِن كُلِّ دَابَّةٍ. And by the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has scattered the creatures, the beasts and the wild animals throughout this world. وَتَصْرِيفِ الرِّيَاحِ, and by the moving of the winds, the blowing of the winds. وَالسَّحَابِ الْمُسَخَّرِ, and by the clouds that are suspended between the sky and the earth. In all of this, لَآيَاتٍ, there are ayat, لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ, for that nation that has aql. So before we go into these major signs of this ayah, which are mentioned in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says at the ending of this ayah, لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمِ يَعْقِلُونَ. These are ayah, these 7 things that are mentioned in this ayah in various formats. These are 6 or 7. These are ayat liqawmi yaqilun. These are signs for people who have aql, who use their intellect. There are a few points that need to be made very, very clear. In this time and age, in the 21st century, when it comes to adyan and religions, and this is kind of the mawdu' and subject of the previous ayah and then continued in this ayah. In ayat number 163, there was a subject and topic related to uluhiyya or ilah. That being that has created everything and for that matter deserves to be worshipped, and who himself has all of the perfect sifat. Asma'ul Husna and Sifat Aliyah, the most beautiful names and highest of attributes. But he can only be one, and he is only one and unique. And then there's the continuation within this ayah, these 7 major things that are mentioned. But these are ayat, la ayatin liqawmi yaqilun. These are ayat for those people that have aql, that have intellect. Now let's analyze a few things here. In the 21st century, people follow science. People want to listen to science. And until science has proven something as a fact, it is not generally accepted by the educational community or considered to be an accepted fact amongst certain circles of intelligence. And for that matter, science has not at least been able to prove up until now the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember, this is science has failed to prove this, and we'll come back to why. On the other side, you have something called logic, mantiq, which is intellect, intelligence, logic. It's also known as mantiq, that using the logical mind to come to conclusions about many things. What is clear about logic is that it also has not, using just pure logic, without the aid and assistance of wahi and revelation, just using pure logic, we human beings have not, or mankind will not be able to prove the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Unfortunately, sometimes this goes out into certain debates, and you have these town hall meetings, and you'll have these, sometimes this debate gets, and people are trying to prove the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala either using science or using logic, and often at times these are the wrong tools. These are the wrong tools. It's not that they're not tools. They are tools, but they're the wrong tools for this purpose. Yes, you can call a fork a useful tool, a utensil, but it is the wrong tool if you want to eat soup. No one can debate that the fork is not a utensil, but it is the wrong utensil for eating soup. Similarly, all this you can apply in any scenario. There are tools, but if they're used in the wrong way, or they're not for that purpose, so they will not serve the purpose. Science is a tool, logic is a tool. These are things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. They have their purpose. If they're used for their purpose, they can do wonders. But if you're trying to use them to prove the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will run into a few problems. This is what the ending of this ayah. We'll come back to this, the ending of the ayat 164. But you have to understand that science, the essence of science is to study matter. If you go all the way, break down science, is to understand matter, to understand, and then whatever is made of matter. Human biology, the world around us, universal system. Anything that is matter related that can be detected using science and scientific tools then that particular thing that can be detected can then be researched and studied, and then therefore you can find conclusions, and you can come to a theory, you can develop a hypothesis and build a theory, and from there, if it is proven, can become a fact. Everything in science is related to the material world, matter itself, all the way down to the atomic level, the atoms and whatever might even be smaller than that. But this is the main purpose for which the tool of science is used. Anything that does not fall within the parameters of matter, science will not be able to really give you an answer for that. It can give you a theory, it can give you a hypothesis, but it will not be able to give you an answer. For example, our ruh, or life. This life that we have, this ruh that we have, science will not deny it. Science will say, okay, there is matter, this human being is made of matter, everything is matter. The external world, whatever the internal organs, everything is matter. And for that, science can go into great depths of study of all this medical field and biology and all of this chemistry, everything that is going on within the human body. But you go to one step further, this physical body, what is the difference between someone that is alive and someone that is dead? You say life or ruh. That's where science fails. Science cannot detect the ruh. Ruh is not matter, it's not material. You can do certain experiments and maybe detect that something is there. What is clear is that no scientist can deny that there is something called life. And that is a great mystery of science, to figure out what is death and the difference between life and death. And to find this ruh, this spirit. Yes, science will go and say, okay, there are many other religions out there and they believe in this spirit and there is this ruh. But if you ask science to detect it and to find it, it's not matter. And you can take this example, you can apply it to everything that is out there that is not necessarily related to just, that is not matter or matter related. And this can also be applied to things that science is not able to find or detect, that is outside of human capability or science capability to detect. For example, the akhirah, the future, the Jannah and Jahannam, and all of these things that science is not able to find them or detect them. So if science fails to detect something like the ruh, then what makes you think that science will be able to detect or find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has created this matter? So that is not the purpose of science. That is why those that believe in science have this great flaw, this major flaw. That they believe in those things that can be detected, and at the same time, they know that there are many things science will fail to detect, but they're not ready to accept them or to believe in them just yet. And the problem with that is that if you follow into something that you're not able to find or detect, it can become very, very dangerous. And we'll come back to that later. Coming to logic. We call it common sense, you call it logic. There are many, and you have you have the deductive mind and the inductive mind. You have all of these various deductions that we human beings can come through using a logic. Keep it very, very simple. Everything related to logic throughout history, and even now that we've been able to compile, everything that is related to logic is confined to human experience. Whatever we're able to logically deduce, we're able to deduce based on experience. And then from that experience, we're able to formulate logical outcomes. So that is what is human capacity. That is one of the limitations of logic, is that there is the human factor involved. And the greatest human factor involved in it is human experience. If we humans have not experienced something, it is very difficult for us to logically accept that. Very difficult for us. That is why many human beings have difficulty accepting certain types of sicknesses, deep, especially mental disorders. Many people that will just go outright deny them or reject them or just say that the person who is sick is acting, because they don't have that level of experience to understand that this is also a defect. The human experience is an amazing thing. If you go back and you study logic and you really go into the details of it, you will understand that a lot of it has to do with human experience. Something that is not related to human experience, then it becomes difficult to have a logical opinion about it. That's where logic stops. These are some of the flaws and the weaknesses of science and then logic. And the reason I'm mentioning these two major things is because this ayat number 164 is related to these two major topics. One is science and scientific facts, and the other is logical outcome. And related to logic, we can have many everything that we speak about that is logical, there is human factor involved. For example, we understand anything that is made must have a maker, logical outcome, based on our experience. Anything that is invented has to have an inventor, a logical outcome. Anything that is created must have a creator, logical outcome. That's a logical outcome. The question comes, okay, what is created must have a creator. Who is the creator? This is where logic stops. Because we have not experienced or understood, being able to understand through our experiences the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We cannot experience Allah. There are many things we as human beings cannot experience. Many things we cannot experience. We cannot experience the joy of Jannah. We cannot experience the pains of Jahannam, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from that. We cannot experience many things. In fact, even our logic will tell us after research and study that there's animals in the world that have senses we don't have. We're not even able to understand them. We're not able to logically experience those senses. There's some animals, they can feel vibrations. That's how they see. Animals that have a sixth sense, they're able to sense the presence of something behind them or around them. There's a kind of defense mechanism. Logically, we cannot understand that. And there are many other elements related that our logic just stops. But what we understand is that logically we can come to logical conclusions, but even in those conclusions, we're not able to actually find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only using pure logic, because the limitation of logic is human experience. And we cannot experience Allah. Now the question comes, okay, so if science, you're not able to find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala due to the simple fact that science is related to what can be considered matter, coming to the atomic level. And then logic, when you have many logical conclusions. And again, logic is an amazing tool. We're not denying the power of logic. Logic is an amazing tool. But logic becomes very flawed if you apply it to a particular situation. For example, in the case of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where the Arab, the Quraysh also had this flaw. They were very logical, very intellectual. So they used to ask that, okay, everything must have a creator. And the question was, Na'udhu billah, who created Allah? They openly asked this question. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed Surah Ikhlas. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ Allahu Samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. This was to correct their logical thinking. Listen, say He's Allah, the one and unique. Allahu Samad, that being that is independently existing, but the whole of creation depends on Him. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. He does not beget children, nor was He begotten. He does not have any ascendants or descendants. Because that is human experience. This is human system. وَلَمْ يَكُلْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٍ. And there's nothing like unto Him. You may be able to give us an example to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it was to correct this thinking, this thought process. that, okay, everything that is created must have a creator, and everything that is created, everything that creates should also in some sense be created. At least this is what the logical outcome comes. This is where the weakness of logic comes. So there are many, many logical arguments when you talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that your logic will stop, it will fail. Sometimes in the debates, another logical outcome that is generally used as proof is that there's always been tawheed, there's always been the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as far back as we can date. The first human being, Adam alayhi salam, he believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know this. All of them, alayhi wasalam, they believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there's a problem with that then. As far as human record in history is concerned, yes, you can prove by human record that there was always a time where people believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But human records started around Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam. Around Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, when the ark was built and human beings started understanding how to document things. So the purpose of the idols they were worshipping, they were able to write and document. And if we go as far back as our documentation can go, maybe we don't go that far. But then the argument also comes that, okay, there's always been those who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but there's also, as far as documentation is concerned, there's also always been shirk. There's always been qawm and nations that associated partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, the logic stops. So to try and prove the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through science, many a time you will fail. And if you try to prove the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with logic only, you will also fail. Where science reaches its limits, that is where wahy starts, revelation. And where logic reaches its limits, that is where wahy starts. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us wahy and revelation as a means of guidance. It is to assist logic that, okay, here's your logical thinking. And here's the answer. Here's your scientific finding. Here's the answer. As far as the creation is concerned and finding the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran has given us the best and most unique system of finding Allah. And it is better than just using logic. It is better than science. And what is that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put together the system of ayat, signs. Why? What we have to understand as human beings is that sometimes, and this is just as an example so that we may understand, is that sometimes we go through, as human beings, our nature is that we move on, right? We had friends when we were very young children, we had certain friends. As you grow older, you lose some friends, you get other friends. You go through life. After you get out of the teenage, you get to the adulthood, now you have new friends. Your group of friends keep changing. This is the nature of this world. All of us have had friends when we were as children, we had friends. I'm sure if you meet them now, sometimes you may not even remember their names. This happens. And there may be some friends that were very, very, very close to us when we were young. We don't even remember them. Many times we can hardly remember their names, hardly remember their faces. But many times those friends also when we were young, they gave us gifts. And sometimes we're going through our things and hidden somewhere, in our closet somewhere. Especially this happens a lot when you're moving from one house to another. Moving is a difficult thing, but once you move, you start to find things. Sometimes you ask yourself, where did I get this item? And you start to think, by seeing the item, you remember your friend. It clicks. Oh yeah, I had this one friend long time ago. Sometimes we can hardly remember that friend, his name, his face. But the item gives us proof that yes, I did have a friend, very good friend. We were more than, siblings. But we're reminded of that friend because of this item that we're holding. If we're not reminded of that friend and we just see the item and it doesn't mean anything to us, that's a different story. That's a totally different story. Then that means that nothing can make us remember that friend. But there are certain friends that we've had that left an impact on us. They used to give us gifts. And we can remember that gift and remember that friend and say, yes, I had that one friend. Sometimes we can hardly remember the name and we try and find that name. This dunya, this world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created a realm, a different world, known as Adam Arwah, the realm of souls. In that realm, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the arwah of mankind, created the souls of mankind. And in that realm, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he gathered all of mankind. And he asked mankind, Alastu bi rabbikum. This is a very, very profound statement. Sometimes the translation, we get the translation wrong. Sometimes people translate it a little bit wrong, that who's your Rabb. No. This ayah in Surah Al-A'raf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that important was the time when we took from the backs of Bani Adam. And again, there's a lot of mystery as to why أَخَذَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ is mentioned. Maybe one time when we, inshallah, if we ever get a chance to get into Jannah, we'll understand how the ruh comes into the body. We have yet to scientifically find the ruh. And then we have yet to understand how the ruh gets into the body. But in the womb of the mother, how the child comes to life, how the ruh goes into the body, dhuhurihim is mentioned. Anyway, it's detailed for. We'll leave that to the tafasir and the mufassirin. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَأَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ. That we took a covenant from the children of Adam alayhi salam, meaning mankind, مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ, from their backs. Again, speaking about the ruh and the system of the ruh. وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ. And we made them witnesses against themselves. And what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take the covenant? What was the covenant? Alastu bi rabbikum. Very powerful, profound statement. The statement is Alastu bi rabbikum. Surah Al-A'raf, which translates to, am I not your Rabb? Again, the system is different when we leave this world. When we leave this world and we're in the grave, then the question will be, Mar Rabbuk, who was your Rabb? But before we came into this world, the question was, Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Rabb? Which means all of mankind, in their ruh, in their spirits, it was already encoded into their spirits, and whatever bounties we were enjoying in Alam Arwah, whatever favors we were enjoying in the realm of souls, it was already evident and logically clear to the ruh. To the ruh, to the spirit, it was already clear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He asked, the question was, Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Rabb? It's like you have a company has hundreds of employees. Every employee that gets hired meets the boss before they start working. And they know the boss. This is my boss. And the boss is giving them, everyone at that company is working for years, 10, 15 years. And they're meeting the boss and they're seeing the boss and, understanding. And then the boss comes and he gathers everyone and he says, am I not your boss? Everyone says, yes, you are. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to a much, much higher degree. But this is also like the example of parents and children. The children go to a certain age and they know who their parents are. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that alam arwah, in that realm of souls, He asked the souls, am I not your Rabb? Every soul of every single human being answered, Bala, definitely, oh Allah, you are our Rabb. Now that was thousands and thousands of years before we were sent into this world. The realm of souls was created, and then this world was created. In how many years? Allahu alam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows how many years have passed. But coming into this world, what is amazing about this dunya is that every time we go to the next stage, many things we forget about the first stage. When children are born, they forget about the womb of the mother. Child grows up from the infant age to the toddler, they forget about the infant things. From toddler to teenage, the teenagers hardly remember much of their children, childhood. And then when the teenager goes to adult and you ask the adult about the infant time, can't remember. Most of us sitting, we try to remember what you did when you were 4 years old. Even ask yourself, do I even remember being 4 years old, 3 years old, 5 years old, 7 years old? Do you remember anything from that time? From when you were 5 years old? Anything do you remember? And if we cannot remember things from this world, this is still the time we spent in this dunya. What makes us think we'll remember the time before this dunya, before this world? The womb of the mother, and then before that, we don't remember anything. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created a system in this world out of His mercy that we may be reminded of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not that we have to go and find Him and seek Him, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the best system. And that is the system of ayat. Just like I gave you the example. In our house, we're moving and we find some item and we're reminded, oh, this is my friend gave me. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put all of these signs in this universe so that we get reminded that, oh yes, the ruh automatically gets reminded, oh yes, there is one Allah. And that is such a system that no human being can deny. It's not something attached to logic, it's not something attached to science, it's attached to the human, very, very human fitrah, the human nature. And when we're reminded of the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, automatically, the heart will turn. Yes, this is from Allah. You can take the biggest of atheists, you can take the biggest of the kuffar, the greatest disbelievers. And when you show them some of the signs and they're reminded, even they'll stop. Either they'll have no answer because they know something isn't right. They'll say, hold on, something deep down inside they'll feel yes. And there's also the other system in times of desperation. Where do we human beings naturally turn? Automatically we turn to Allah. This is the fitrah of insan. When we talk about fitrah, nature, this is within the very, very nature of insan, the very nature of the human being. Now, when you start seeing the signs in the universe, not necessarily using science, just looking at the signs, automatically your mind and your heart, this is a matter of the heart will just turn. Yes, there is. This is a sign from Allah. Human being gets this feeling that, oh yes, takes them back. Sometimes, even as believers, we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you see a sign. And that yaqeen, that conviction comes and all of a sudden, you get a feeling that you've never gotten before. It's a different kind, you remember this kind of. And it's a remembering and it's a feeling of a very, very pure time. The human being goes to a very pure place, yes. We get out of this, what we call madiyah, this material world. When we talk about the system of muraqabah, of meditation, tafakkur, right? Tafakkaruna fi khalqis samawati wal ard. This is the essence of tafakkur. This is the essence of really contemplating and meditating on the heavens and the earth. It takes you to a space and a place very pure. The heart goes, yes, there is. There was a time, very pure time. And this is also the essence of yaqeen. Yaqeen is not something difficult to get. Sometimes we think it's so difficult. No. Yaqeen is not difficult. Yaqeen comes when you see the ayat and those go into your heart and then you remember. And that remembrance stays with you. Yes. Then that yaqeen is formed. It's so strong yaqeen. One thing about yaqeen, remember, yaqeen defies logic. Don't try to apply logic in yaqeen, aspects of yaqeen. There's one Allah and He does however He wants, whatever He wants. Once you start applying the logic, okay, how did this happen? Yaqeen is gone. Now you're trying to find the reason of how, when, if. You're trying to apply the material laws, and yaqeen is gone. When it comes to the system of yaqeen, then yes, it starts with these ayat. These ayat, the person is reminded, yes. Yes, there is. When you see the signs, then he's reminded, yes. There was a time when I was asked, Alastu bi Rabbikum? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked me, Alastu bi Rabbikum? Am I not your Rabb? And I said, Bala, yes. That was a different time when I accepted Allah. Those signs are so clear, a person is. Then he's taken back to that. Just like sometimes we're shown photos of our childhood and we're taken back to that pure time. We're taken back to the time. We're so happy, children are so happy. Yes, there was also a time, there was a fence there and I was so happy. And I used to swing on this swing and that was my whole world. The childhood. Subhanallah. It's a time of it's a very blessing time. Person, I was so happy, children. And sometimes we see the photos of the childhood and we reminisce, oh yes, I was so happy. Same thing, we see these signs, the happiness comes inside the heart. Oh yes, there was a time. If you accept them. Again, if you're shown the signs and you're not even reminded, so then really no one can really help them. Those are the kuffar and disbelievers, they're so far gone. You even show them all the signs, they don't accept it. They're so far gone. But a believer, when he's shown the signs, then he's reminded, takes him back. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains that experience. It's not something difficult to get. It's very easy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the ayat of the Quran, وَإِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا. When our ayat are recited to them, the iman increases. الَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم. When they're reminded of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم. Their hearts, وَجِلَتْ. It's very powerful shaking. That reminder takes them back. A reminder takes it straight back, yes. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains this feeling in quite a few places in the Quran. In Surah Az-Zumar, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, ثُمَّ تَلِينُ جُلُودُهُمْ وَقُلُوبُهُمْ إِلَىٰ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Then at that time, the very skin, even their skin and their hearts, turn to the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A person is a whole different realm, whole different. And sometimes we think, okay, maybe somebody's big friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or some awliyaullah or some great sheikh, maybe they get this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us very clearly, any believer, you have this yaqeen, this will happen. So this is what is also mentioned. Again, there's so many details related to this. Being reminded of that time, being taken back to that pure world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ. And all of this is ayat for those who want to use that, to come back to their senses, to come back to their aql, to be reminded of that time. This is what is the meaning of the last part of the ayah. Inshallah, we'll go through the ayah and we'll try to go through these ayat. So that inshallah, this is also a tadhkir, a reminder. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the whole Quran a reminder. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَعِبْرَةً لِمَنْ يَخْشَى. This Quran is a ibrah for whosoever fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A great lesson. And the other ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us the Quran is the greatest reminder, greatest dhikr. Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikr wa inna lahu lahafidhun. Definitely we have revealed this dhikr, this Quran, and we're going to protect it. And also we're asked in the Quran, فَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ, you'll not be reminded. So we'll go through these signs and about that reminder of how that time when we were asked, Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Rabb? And what was that time? Every human being has experienced and can experience when they're shown the sign. When you accept that this is a sign and you're reminded and you're taken back, it takes you back to some very, very, very blessed time, very full of bliss, happiness. And also that yaqeen is then established, that yes, that Allah that has created everything and has brought me into this world and has taken care of me up until this point, that is the same Allah that will take care of me. And that yaqeen is established, and it's not some logical aspect or some scientific. Yaqeen is between you and Allah then. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding and give all of us the tawfiq to practice His deen. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ.